What if the greatest love story starts with a lie? Welcome to Tangled Games, the first sizzling installment in the dating game series by best-selling author T.K. Leigh, a story where hearts race, sparks fly, and nothing is ever quite what it seems. Meet Harley Hope Maxwell, a successful, strong-willed woman who's sworn off love after one too many heartbreaks. When she agrees to a fake dating arrangement with Easton Blake, a charming and dangerously attractive actor trying to escape the spotlight, things start out simple, just a game. No emotions, no attachments, no regrets. But in the world of pretend romance, reality has a funny way of sneaking in. As their chemistry becomes impossible to ignore, Harley and Easton must face their pasts, question their truths, and decide whether the feelings between them are just part of the game or something real. Tangled Games is more than a romance. It's a story about vulnerability, trust, and the unexpected moments that change everything. If you're looking for a story full of passion, playful banter, slow burn tension, and characters who feel heartbreakingly real, this is the audiobook you won't want to miss. So press play and step into a love story that was never supposed to happen, but might just be everything they ever needed. Chapter 1. Nora. I don't have many memories of my father. Not only did he die when I was young, but even when he was alive, he was often deployed. Despite that, some memories occasionally find their way to the surface, like when he came into my room and woke me up with an offer to make pancakes in the shape of my favorite animated character, or the way he'd tell me he loved me out of the blue, something I longed to hear from anyone after he died, or the way I can't look at a book without thinking of his passion for the written word. Memories of the hours I spent with him at the library as clear as if it were just yesterday. Instead, over 25 years have passed since I watched his flag-covered casket being lowered into the ground. As I run my fingers along the spines of the hardcover novels while perusing the shelves of my favorite Manhattan bookstore, I feel his presence. Then again, I feel him whenever I walk into a bookstore or library. Maybe that's why I was drawn to this place today when I have a long list of things I should be doing instead. Maybe I wanted to feel my dad's presence again, his reassurance, his love. When my hand glides over a familiar title, I stop, a nostalgic smile curving my lips. Everyone remembers the book that sparked their love of reading. For some, it was Nancy Drew. For others, the Babysitter's Club series. For others still, it was Voici, Andrew's Flowers in the Attic. But for me, it was something else entirely. I fell in love with Maxime de Winter from Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. I don't know what attracted me to the story about a young woman who married a wealthy older widower, only to discover the happily ever after she thought she'd have would come at a steep price. But ever since my teenage years, I often return to the tragic tale. How did the unnamed narrator feel when she went from being a lady's companion to the lady of an English manor? Such a drastic change, one she never fathomed happening to her. Yet Maxime fell for her, regardless that she was an ordinary girl, at least in her eyes. In Maxime's, she was fascinating. Maybe that's why I've always loved this story, because Maxime made her feel extraordinary, not the stupid little girl her employer made her out to be. For the longest time, it gave me hope I'd find something remarkable, too. Sliding the book off the shelf, I flip to the first page. A warmth rushes through me as I read the opening line. It's like seeing an old friend after spending years apart. Last night, I dreamed I went to Manderley again. I stiffen at the deep, guttural voice reciting the first sentence. It sends a shiver down my spine. The subtle British accent, the perfect inflection to set the tone. Slowly, I turn around. A tiny breath manages to escape in response to the pair of blazing blue eyes staring back. The corner of his full lips quirked up into a mischievous smirk. I trace my gaze over his face, the scruff along his jaw, his chiseled nose, his smoldering stare. My pulse kicks up, skin tingling with a vulnerability I didn't think possible from a look alone. It's quite refreshing to meet a woman who appreciates a physical book, He continues smoothly when I remain mute. Most people these days seem to prefer the convenience of an e-reader. I swallow. While I can understand that, my tone turns sultry. There's no replacement for the feel of a real book. I close Rebecca, running a lithe finger along the cover. Emboldened by the raw hunger covering every inch of him, I curve toward him, acting incredibly out of character for me. But isn't this every woman's fantasy? Or at least every bookworm's fantasy? Running into a handsome, well-dressed man in a bookstore. One who appreciates books for the gift they are, or the scent. I continue in a low voice, of a real book. I linger near his neck for a moment, inhaling deeply. It's incredibly intoxicating. I pull back, eyes locking with his. Silence stretches between us as he focuses on me in a way that pierces my soul, as if able to read my thoughts, learn my deepest, darkest desires. With that one look, everything else disappears. Gone is the background chatter, nearby sirens, whirring of the air conditioning. I'm in a vacuum, an alternate universe where nothing exists outside of me. This man, and this arresting lust rioting through me, leaving me mindless, breathless, and perhaps a bit reckless. When he lifts his hand, my heart hammers in my chest, the hairs on my nape standing on end. I moisten my lips as I brace to feel his skin against mine, his body against mine, his anything against mine. Instead, he gingerly takes the book from my hand. Disappointment ripples inside me. It lasts less than a second before he grips my hip, harsh and invigorating. A gasp tumbles from my mouth when he yanks my body against his. I barely have time to register what's happening as his other hand burrows into my strawberry blonde waves. This is all surreal, like I'm in the presence of Maxime de Winter himself, my deepest fantasy coming to life in the aisle of a Manhattan bookstore. With unhurried movements, his lips descend toward mine. Each prolonged second is excruciating, ratcheting up my desire to a smoldering level, burning through me. If only there could be an invention that bottled up a memory, he murmurs in a husky voice, his breath caressing my mouth. And now you've quoted yet another one of my favorite lines from Rebecca. Start quoting Lady Chatterley's lover and we'll have to find somewhere more private. He cocks his head to the side. Is that a promise I eye him? There's no way he's read that book. Or if, by some fluke, he won't be familiar enough with it to pull a quote out of thin air. I think, with a slight nod, I murmur, it is. Well then. He adjusts his stance, his arousal pushing against my abdomen, his lips skimming my neck. I believe in having a good heart, a chirpy penis, a lively intelligence, and the courage to say shit in front of a lady. I burst out laughing. The sound carries through the aisles, attracting several curious stares, but only for a heartbeat. It's one of the things that drew me to Manhattan in the first place. Here, no one cares about anyone besides themselves. Here, I can disappear into the background. Here, I can be a nobody. But I don't feel like that right now. Not with the intensity in this man's gaze. Why did I have a feeling you'd quote that particular line? I muse. I've been carrying that gem around in my back pocket for ages, waiting for the perfect opportunity to woo a beautiful woman perusing the literary classics section of a bookstore. If that was your game plan, the odds were stacked against you. Perhaps. He shrugs slightly, his eyes dancing with amusement. But it worked on you. Didn't it? Jury's still out? His expression darkens once more. I suppose I need to figure out another way to woo you then. And what would that be? This. He crashes his lips to mine, the kiss surprising, yet addictive. I stiffen, taken aback by his forwardness, especially in such a public place. But that's short-lived. A burning lust for more making me blind to everything else. This is one of the most spontaneous things I've done in quite some time. I've never been one for overt displays of affection, at least not in places that are so public. A busy Manhattan bookstore is the definition of public, but that doesn't bother me right now. And it obviously doesn't bother him either. Instead of pulling away at the sound of nearby whispers and snickers, he deepens the kiss, his hand on my waist steering me down the aisle until my back comes into contact with the wall. He moves his hips, his erection grinding against me. A low groan rumbles from his throat as I dig my hands into his thick hair that's a cacophony of shades, from brown to copper, and even a few hints of blonde at the ends. When he tears away, our ragged breathing pervades the space between us. Let's get out of here. And where shall we go? I zero in on his plump lips that shine with the remnants of my gloss. Somewhere more private. I arch a brow. Private. With a slow nod. He lowers his mouth toward my neck. His breath on my skin is intoxicating, causing a pleasurable ache to build deep within me. One I doubt will be satisfied until I have him. All of him. Yes. Gorgeous. His lips skim against the sensitive flesh where my neck meets my shoulder. Somewhere I can take my time indulging in every single inch of you. He nibbles my earlobe, eliciting a whimper from me, one as innate and uncontrollable as breathing. Where I can make you scream without having to worry who will overhear, needing to maintain some semblance of control, which escapes me with every word he speaks. I place a hand on his chest and gently push him away. And here I thought you didn't mind making a scene in public. Why else would you have shoved your tongue down my throat, then groped me for everyone to see? He smirks. I didn't hear any complaints. That's because there were none to be had. Even so, I know where to draw the line. His tone had dropped to that toe-curling decibel once more. He leans closer but doesn't touch me, maintaining his distance, regardless of how slight. And I most certainly draw the line at allowing anyone else to witness your blissful expression when I make you come. Over and over and over, until you beg me to stop. But even then, I won't stop making you feel good. Playing the part of the vixen to his fox, I trail my fingers down the buttons of his shirt and grab his tie, pulling his mouth to within a whisper of mine. Then let's go somewhere so you can make me scream. His pupils dilate, nostrils flaring. He clutches my cheeks in his calloused hands, slamming his lips against mine in a punishing kiss that leaves me breathless once more, breaking away sooner than I'd like. He grasps my hand, not allowing me to catch my breath as he pulls me through the aisles. I do my best to keep up with his determined strides, but it takes 2 of my steps to meet one of his. My 5'4" frame no match for his estimated 6'4" stature. Still, the conviction and resolve in his movements send a thrill through me. I almost forgot. He spins around, nearly giving me whiplash as he changes direction. What is it, I ask? My skin warming from the stares and snickers coming from those who witnessed our moment. Why this? Of course. He stops at the proverbial scene of the crime and picks up my abandoned copy of Rebecca. What about it? You should have it. I'm buying it for you. He pauses, brows furrowed. You don't already own it, do you? Actually, no. As much as I adore this book, you'd think I'd own a copy, having spent the better part of the last decade living in a tiny Manhattan apartment. I've learned to only buy the essentials. Now you will. He squeezes my hand and leads me toward the cashier. You sure know the way to a woman's heart. Books and the promise of sex. What did I do to win the jackpot? He edges toward me. More than you'll ever know. Gorgeous. There's that word again. The one that turns my insides to jelly. He must sense it, too, wrapping an arm around my waist to support me as we wait our turn. If I didn't love books as much as I do, I'd tell him to forget about it and take me to bed. To hell with waiting in line. But I want this reminder of today, one I know I'll cherish in the months ahead. After what feels like an eternity, he pays for my book, then steers me toward the large glass door, holding it for me as I step out onto the busy Greenwich Village sidewalk. Finding my hand once again, he wraps his around it, pulling me toward the nearest corner as a dark SUV pulls up. He approaches and opens the rear passenger door. "Is this your ride?" I ask playfully. "It is." I'm about to climb in when he stops me, pinching my chin. He urges my mouth toward his, running his thumb along my bottom lip. I can't get enough of these lips. He dips his head toward me, tasting them in a soft kiss. "Let's go so you can have more of them, and then some." I waggle my brows. He all but tosses me into the back of the SUV, giving a small smile to the man behind the wheel as he merges into the early evening traffic. "Eager much," I jest. He wraps an arm around my shoulders, pulling me into his embrace as he buries his head in my neck. "You have no idea. Gorgeous." I sigh, melting into him, savoring every second of the 20-minute drive to the Upper West Side. I want nothing more than to get out of this SUV and continue where we left off in the bookstore, but at the same time, I want to stay here, too. It's a strange sensation to be pulled in so many directions at once, to yearn for the future, but also want to live in the present, to want to hurry up, yet also slow down. When the SUV pulls up in front of a tall apartment building in a quiet neighborhood, he turns toward me, a single brow raised. "You sure you don't want to change your mind? Go back to the bookstore, pick out a different book, perhaps one with less complications." I shake my head, brushing my lips against his. "Not a chance in hell." He presses a chaste, yet invigorating kiss to my mouth. Once he slides out of the SUV, he helps me to the ground, hand on the small of my back. He leads me toward the lobby of a building at which I could never fathom being able to afford to live. The doorman offers us a warm greeting as he opens the glass doors, then runs ahead to call for an elevator. One arrives immediately. We step inside, the steel doors sliding closed, shutting out the rest of the world. I attempt to step away, but he tightens his grip. "Don't think you're getting away from me that easily." He croons into my ear. I glance up at him. "Is that right now that I've brought you back to my lair? You're mine." He grins, a devilish glint in his eye. "How very primitive of you." I adjust his tie, smoothing it down his body, able to make out the defined chest and abdominal muscles underneath. "Just you wait." He nuzzles my neck, the scraping of his unshaven jaw against my flesh igniting a flame inside me. "You're about to find out exactly how primitive I can be." The elevator dings and stops, announcing our arrival. He nips my skin before linking his fingers with mine. He leads me down the hall, approaching the only door on this floor. "So this is home?" I ask flirtatiously, as he inputs a code into a keypad above the doorknob. He's about to press the final number when he pauses, a breathtaking smile crossing his lips. It's no longer mischievous or salacious. It's peaceful, serene. It brings me peace, too. No. Love. He grabs my left hand, bringing it up to his mouth, feathering a kiss on my fourth finger where a diamond ring typically sits. "You are my home, Nora." I sigh, draping my arms over his shoulders. "You're my home, too." Anderson. Chapter 2. Nora, surprise. I come to an abrupt stop the second I step into the apartment I've shared with Anderson the past few months. After I'd agreed to make the move to his home country of Belmont, he bought it so I'd still have somewhere to call home here in the States. I dart my eyes toward the open living space off the entry where my three best friends, Chloe, Evie, and Izzy, stand beneath giant balloons that spell out "Engaged AF." It reminds me of the ding-dong divorced party they threw me around this time last year. Back then, falling in love again was the last thing I wanted. That was before my path crossed Anderson's, something that never would have happened if my 3 best girls hadn't encouraged me to take the trip on Route 66 I'd put off for years. I marvel at all the pieces that had to snap into place for us to meet and fall in love. It wasn't an easy journey, and I'm sure we'll have more than our fair share of struggles ahead, but Anderson's worth it. What's going on? I glance at him. In the few days since he surprised me with a proposal, I've tried to remain cognizant of Anderson's desire that we keep our engagement to ourselves until he has a chance to talk to his father. After all, he's crown prince. As heir apparent, the king's approval is required for all marriages. He'd already bought the ring, so he'd have it when the time was right. Apparently, that was the other day, despite the lack of formality. Then again, that's typical Anderson. From the moment we met, he's always been spontaneous. Your engagement party, of course, he says with a wink. But he swallows my protest with a kiss. Then he reaches into the inner pocket of his suit jacket, retrieving a familiar velvet box. With minimal fanfare, he pops it open and slides the stunning ring with a vintage flair onto my finger. Taking my hands in his, he runs his thumb along my knuckles. It's only been a matter of days. But every time I leave the apartment and have to take off my ring, I feel like a piece of myself is missing. It wasn't fair of me to ask you to not share this with your friends. You had your reasons. I insist in a low voice. True. But when I proposed, I promised to give you everything you ever wanted. He nods toward the living area where my friends wait, their own significant others close by. That's what I'm doing. You deserve to celebrate this important milestone with your best friends, not be forced to keep it a secret. They know not to tell anyone until there's a formal announcement. You're about to leave the only place you've called home to start over in a new country. And not merely as another face in the crowd, but as Prince Gabriel Anderson Wellingston's American fiancé. You deserve one last taste of normalcy. We both do. I lift myself onto my toes, draping my arms around his neck, peering into those eyes that mesmerized me from the beginning. Thank you, I murmur against his lips. I love you, and I love you. I gently touch my mouth to his. For crying out loud. Will you stop making out so we can see the ring? Evie exclaims excitedly. I laugh against Anderson's mouth, then pull away. My friends quickly advance on me, grasping my hand to admire the setting. Oh, Nora, it's breathtaking. Izzy exhales as Anderson approaches the men, each of them offering him their own congratulations. A few years ago, I never could have imagined this scene. Evie was still hopefully devoted to her ex, Trevor, which was to her detriment. Chloe was still vehemently anti-relationship. Izzy was still trying to convince all of us that, as a nurse who worked strange hours, she didn't have time for a relationship. And I was engaged to the man I'd hoped would help me come to terms with losing Hunter, my first love. Everything's changed. Julian taught Evie she shouldn't have to sacrifice who she is for someone to love her. Lincoln helped Chloe see she's worthy of love. Izzy learned she could run from love all she wants, but it will eventually come back for her, like happened with Asher. And I learned it's okay to be vulnerable, to be less than perfect, to be human. Have you discussed a date? Evie grabs my elbow, leading me toward the kitchen island where a wide variety of finger foods have been set out. I don't have to ask who put this all together on such short notice. It has Evie written all over it. After all, she was the one who organized my ding-dong divorced party, including the rather macabre wedding cake featuring a bride pushing her groom off the top tier to his bloody demise. This time, instead of a cake, there's an assortment of cupcakes arranged in the shape of a giant diamond ring. Not really. I grit a smile. We may not have much control as to when, but I told him I wanted to wait until you two can travel again. I gesture between Chloe and Evie, both of them 6 months pregnant. I'd like a long engagement anyway. That will give me time to get adjusted to life over there. Are you ready for life over there? Chloe presses. For him to finally go public with your relationship? Is anyone ever ready to be in the spotlight? I joke, hoping my light tone masks my nerves. It's part of the reason he hasn't brought me back home yet. He wanted to wait until we'd been together longer than a few months, wanted to give us more time to be us two strangers who met on a road trip and ended up falling in love. Because once we land in Belmont, I'll become the American girl who stole the crown prince. A few photographers have snapped shots of us together, but thanks to recent drama in the British royal family, any that were published have been buried in the headlines. Just ignore everything, Evie suggests with a wave of her hand, pushing a few locks of her vibrant red hair behind her ear. She and Chloe know personally how brutal celebrity gossip can be. After all, they both work in the magazine industry. Chloe having been on the gossip column herself before being promoted to the current affairs desk. Exactly. Izzy gives me an encouraging smile. It's all just noise. If anyone's had a taste of what I'm about to go through, it's Izzy. Her husband is Asher York, rock god who sells out stadiums nightly. I have no doubt there have been quite a few stories written about the woman married to the man who was once rock and roll's most eligible bachelor. But Izzy's never cared what anyone thought of her. Although she's adopted, she grew up with the unwavering support of two loving parents. They never berated her or made her feel like she'll never measure up, like she's a complete failure at everything she does, like my mother has always made me feel. All that matters is that he chose you, Evie adds. That he loves you. That he wants your pussy for the rest of his life. I burst out laughing. This is one of the many reasons these girls are my family, my soulmates. No matter what happens in my life, they have my back. When I told them I'd agreed to marry my now ex, Jeremy, after only a few months, they offered their unwavering support. Once they made sure it was what I wanted. It wasn't, but that didn't make them turn their backs. It only made them support me even more. When I told them I'd discovered Jeremy in bed with another man, they helped me drown my sorrows in a bottle of wine. Not once did they question what I did to make Jeremy stray, like my mother did. They happily helped me navigate my divorce, and once my divorce was finalized, they threw me a party to celebrate the next stage of my life. It was at that party they opened my eyes to the fact I married Jeremy to try and patch a wound that still hadn't healed, that I was still holding on to Hunter, that I needed to let him go in order to find the happiness I deserved. So I set out to do just that. Never did I expect to meet a man like Anderson along the way. I truly believe some higher power played a hand in our meeting, knew that we were two lost souls in need of something, in need of each other. When I glance across the room to where he laughs and jokes with Lincoln, Asher, and Julian, my heart expands. Over the past months, they've welcomed him into their fold, treating him like he's just one of the guys, not the heir to the throne of the European nation of Belmont. I hope that doesn't change. As if able to sense me staring, his eyes find mine. Every time our gazes lock like this, it feels like the first time I glanced up in a downtown Chicago diner to see him staring at me. I still feel my surprise when I left the pool at my motel on Route 66 and ran into him. Literally. I still feel the awe and wonder when he told me I was beautiful the first time. It's these mundane events that will always hold a special place in my heart, the foundation of who we are as a couple. I have to believe these building blocks of our relationship are strong enough to help us navigate the uncertainty of our future. At least the uncertainty of my future. Anderson's future has been written since he was born. I just hope there's a place in it for me, too. Can I have your attention, please? Evie calls out. I snap my gaze to where she stands in the center of the room, the picture of the perfect hostess. It's not an engagement party without a toast. She nods at Izzy, who walks around with a tray, offering a glass to everyone, specifying which ones have alcohol and which don't. Anderson approaches with 2 flutes, extending one toward me. One tiny sip won't hurt. He murmurs so no one can hear as I wrap my fingers around the flute. I nod in agreement. He isn't a big drinker these days. Not after his doctors recommended avoiding alcohol to help prevent any multiple sclerosis flare-ups. Okay, you love birds. Chloe teases. If you can keep your hands off each other for a minute or two, I'd like to say a few words. He pulls away, but keeps me in his embrace, a finger tracing a light circle on my bicep. It's a simple gesture, but it still lights me on fire. It doesn't help I thought we'd be having sex once we got back here, not walking into a surprise engagement party. Talk about being cock-blocked. Or, in my case, clam-jammed. I met Nora during our freshman year of college. Chloe begins, a nostalgic smile on her face. We were both scared, both in a strange place, both forced to grow up pretty damn quickly, although the jury's still out on whether we've succeeded in that. Growing up is overrated, Anderson states with a chuckle. I'll drink to that. Evie raises her glass but doesn't take a sip. As her roommate, Chloe continues. I witnessed a lot of her ups and downs. I was there when she got home from that first date with Hunter. I listened to her gush and swoon over everything he did and said. At the time, I was convinced they were soulmates. She pauses, until she FaceTimed me and told me she'd agreed to travel Route 66 with a complete stranger after her rental car broke down. Her eyes lock with mine. You may have just met him, may not have known anything about him, but in those few moments, I knew this was different. Knew this man would change everything. Knew you'd found your true soulmate. She smiles at me before clearing her throat and turning to address everyone else once more. They say most people fall in love 3 times during their lifetimes, that each of these loves serves a different purpose. Evie appears quite pleased by this, considering her obsession with the number 3. Your first love typically happens when you're young, around high school. Chloe gives me a pointed look, and I know all too well to whom she's referring. Now that I'm older, I consider my first love to be Hunter, but before him was Aaron, my high school sweetheart, and the person I was dating when I got a wrong number text from Hunter. While this love is more akin to infatuation, you can't dismiss it altogether. This first love teaches you what love can be. It's not all-consuming. It's merely your first exposure to this strange sensation. Think about the ocean. It's like dipping your toes into the water to test it, but you don't venture out too far yet. Now, your second love is challenging. This is the one that teaches us what a broken heart feels like, teaches us lessons about life, makes us stronger. In this second love, there's great pain. She swallows hard, her expression falling, and great loss. But with this love, we grow. We learn more about love, what it's like to fall in love, what it's like to lose that love. Because we experienced this second, heartbreaking love, we're able to figure out who we are and what we want in life. We're finally ready to experience real love. Anderson pulls me closer as I swallow past the lump in my throat over the reminder of Hunter, of exploding with joy when he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him, of planning our life together, of losing him and our unborn baby in the car accident I survived, of the years I spent wishing I hadn't. And that brings us to the third love. Her expression and tone brighten. This is the love that takes you by surprise, finds you when you least expect it. Probably at a time in your life when love is the last thing you want. You fight it with everything you have, but before you know it, you can't imagine your life without this person, even though you barely know a thing about them. She lifts her gaze to Lincoln, who towers over her by more than a foot. On the outside, they're as different as 2 people can be, but outward differences don't matter where the heart is concerned. I've learned that lesson with Anderson. You somehow find the ability to look past all his imperfections, all his faults. She pauses, then adds, all his regrets. I nod, swiping at the tears sliding down my cheek. At the end of the day, those things don't matter. All that does is the understanding in your heart that you finally arrived, that you finally found peace, that you finally found a home. And no matter where you go, no matter the miles you travel, as long as you're together, you will be home. She raises her glass, and everyone else follows suit. This mishmashed group of people that has somehow become my family toasting us. I'm thrilled beyond belief you've finally found your way home. To Nora and Anderson. Nora and Anderson. Everyone repeats. I look at Anderson, who tips his flute toward mine. He curves into me, his breath warm on my lips. Here's to our next adventure. Love. I clink his glass. To our next adventure. Chapter 3. Anderson. Nora. Darling. I murmur into her neck, rousing her from sleep. We can't be there already, she replies in a scratchy voice. Almost. We'll be landing in about an hour. I thought you might want to take the opportunity to freshen up beforehand. She groans, her eyes remaining closed. It's frowned upon to step off a plane with bedhead. Isn't it? I chuckle, brushing my lips against her temple. You're still gorgeous. While I doubt there will be many reporters at the airfield when we land, being in this life means always looking the part. She rolls over in the bed in the rear cabin of the private jet, her gaze meeting mine. I'd prefer to play the part of an unknown New Yorker a little while longer. Wouldn't we all? I smooth a few of her waves away from her face, cupping her cheek. Are you nervous? What do I have to be nervous about? It's not like I'm flying in the royal family's jet and moving to a country I've never been, where I'll have to trade my privacy and anonymity for the spotlight as the crown prince's girlfriend, and eventually fiancée once you speak with your father. Exactly, I retort playfully. You have absolutely nothing to be nervous about. Her laughter fills the space before her expression turns serene. Even so, one thing is certain. What's that? You're worth any nerves I may experience? I'm glad you think so. I place a gentle kiss on her lips before standing and buttoning my suit jacket. When she sees I'm already dressed, she furrows her brow. How long have you been awake? Not too long. I'll give you some privacy to freshen up. I'll have breakfast waiting when you're ready. I bend down and kiss her once more before walking toward the door, my hand on the knob. I pause to appreciate her beauty one last time while she's still the woman I met on Route 66. I can't shake the premonition that the second this plane lands at the airfield in Belmont, everything will change. Nora will change. On a long sigh, I slip out of the bedroom and into the bright cabin. Sir, a voice says once I close the door. I look up as Creed strides toward me, his dark eyes urgent. A military man with special ops training. He's typically calm and collected, nothing usually causing him concern. Immediately, I know something's wrong, something I won't like. What happened? He licks his lips, an uneasiness about him. This just hit the wires about 15 minutes ago. He holds out his tablet. I take it from him and read the headline. A wave of nausea pummels through me as I waver on my legs. I quickly place a hand on the top of a nearby seat, attempting to steady myself. Are you okay? Anders Creed asks in a low voice, shifting from my chief protection officer to childhood friend. Fuck. I hiss under my breath, jaw tightening. We were careful. I didn't think anyone would even recognize me. It appears it was simply a case of right place at the right time. He answers, all business once more. Or perhaps wrong place at the wrong time. I swallow hard, staring at the photo below the headline announcing to the world something I'd hoped to keep to myself a little longer. But that's impossible now, especially when the photographer was able to capture the perfect angle. Nora's left hand cupping my face as I kissed her on the sidewalk in front of our Upper West Side apartment building, a large diamond ring on a very important finger. She'd started to take it off before we left our apartment, but I insisted she keep it on, give her a few more minutes to wear it before we needed to keep it a secret again. I should have known better. Do I want to know what kind of backlash we're facing? I give the tablet back to Creed. Public perception is mixed. Some people aren't thrilled at the idea of you being engaged to a foreigner. The American press is positive, so that's a good thing. Unfortunately, Europe is a different story. I figured as much. I pinch the bridge of my nose and squeeze my eyes shut. A muscle in my shoulder twitches, so I shift my stance, trying to shake it off. Sir, are you sure anything else I need to be concerned about? I interrupt before Creed can finish his question. I don't want to hear it, don't want him verbalizing my own fears. That he's noticed more and more signs of a potential flare-up in my MS. Or worse, that my condition is deteriorating. There's also the matter of the media. The media. A media contingent has assembled at the airport and is awaiting your arrival. I have a team handling it as we speak. I run a hand over my face, cursing myself for being so careless. I just wanted one last moment of feeling like a normal couple. But we're not even on the ground yet and are already in the thick of it. I can arrange for your flight to be diverted to a different airfield. I vehemently shake my head. That will look like I'm trying to hide something. We're already on the defensive. No sense in giving them even more fodder to speculate on. Agreed. So we'll keep to our original plan, but there will be additional security present. Your private secretary, Lieutenant Colonel Bridge, will meet the plane to go over a game plan for your arrival. I inhale a deep breath I hope will calm me. All it does is increase my anxiety. What's wrong? I snap my head up, my gaze settling on Nora standing in the doorway of the back cabin. She's dressed in a knee-length, floral wrap dress, her hair in loose waves, makeup freshly applied. How do I tell her our secret's out, that the European media already seems to loathe her before we've even landed in Belmont? I'll give you two some privacy. Creed looks at Nora. Ma'am. Then he turns to me and bows his head. Sir. Spinning. He stalks toward the front of the plane, disappearing from view. Anders. What's going on? I refocus my gaze on her. What I wouldn't give to rewind the clocks to that moment in our New York apartment before we left. When I pinned her against the wall and kissed her like it was the last time I would. Now I fear it was. At least the last time she kissed Anderson North. The alter ego I travel under when I don't want people to know who I am. And the man Nora first met on Route 66 before I told her the truth. I gesture to a nearby table. Let's sit. I'm not sure I want to. She pushes out a nervous laugh. In my experience, nothing good follows a request to sit, especially considering your morose expression. You look like you just learned someone died. No one died, I assure her, although it feels like something has. It's not our engagement being public knowledge that has me on edge. It's the fact it was leaked before I had a chance to speak to my father, before I had an opportunity to go through the typical procedure required of all members of the royal family, or at least the first 5 people in the line of succession. I help her into a chair, then skirt around to the other side of the table and sit, taking her hand in mine once more. I toy with her empty ring finger. If there's one positive thing to come from this, she can now wear her ring all the time. At least I think she can. I'll need to talk to my private secretary before confirming anything. I messed up. Nora, I admit softly. She blinks. What are you talking about? Pulling my phone out of the inside pocket of my suit jacket. I navigate to the website Creed had shown me. Then I hand it to Nora, allowing her to see the headline and the photo of us in an intimate kiss, her ring prominent. Below that are more photos taken after she pulled out of the kiss, her face visible. An American princess, Nora reads, snapping up her head to meet my gaze, confusion etched in her brow. How I thought, it's my fault, I assure her, not wanting her to burden herself with even a hint of the blame. I'd grown complacent, didn't think anyone would recognize me. It's not like I'm a member of the British royal family or anything, but some people still know who you are. All the more reason I should have been more careful. Shouldn't have insisted it was okay for you to wear your ring. It was selfish of me. I hate looking at your finger and not seeing a ring. I glance at her still vacant hand. Once we boarded this plane, I knew you wouldn't be able to wear it, even at home, until we went through the proper channels. When I put the ring back on your finger the other night, your face lit up. Nora, I hated depriving you of that again. Now my carelessness may cost us. This story is making headlines everywhere, not only in my home country, but also all over Europe and America. Nora sits with her spine straight, not reacting as she processes this news. I wish she would. Wish I knew what she was thinking. When we land, we'll have to face the media. According to Creed, there's already a frenzy waiting. She nods, glancing out the window. Nothing but miles of clear blue sky surrounding us. I guess this is one way of ripping off the bandage, so to speak. She laughs under her breath, but it's laced with anxiety. To say she's been apprehensive about being thrust into the spotlight would be an understatement. Despite her assurances that I'm worth the lack of obscurity she once craved, I didn't want it to happen like this. I can't tell you how sorry I am about this, Nora. This isn't how I'd hoped to introduce you to my world, my life. I know. She treats me to a smile, but it doesn't reach her eyes. If this past year has taught me anything, it's that you'll always be by my side. As long as you promise to stay true to that, we'll get through whatever awaits us. And I will. No matter what happens, no matter what people do to try to break us apart, I will always be by your side. I bring her hand to my lips, feathering a kiss along her knuckles. Promise. She swallows hard and repeats, promise. But regardless of our affirmations to one another, I still can't shake the feeling that we're about to set sail on uncharted waters. That life as we know it is about to change. That our love as we know it is about to change. Chapter 4. Nora, my stomach is in knots. I don't want Anderson to worry any more than he already is. But I can't shake off the unsettling feeling winding through me over what awaits us when we land. Is our love strong enough to endure the storm I sense brewing offshore? Or will this life pull us into its riptide until we drown? Perhaps I didn't give this scenario the careful consideration it deserves. I've known who Anderson is from almost the beginning, yet I haven't been exposed to what he is. Not in this world. Isn't that why I agreed to move here with him, to get to know that part of him? 2. Why do I feel like it's all falling apart before I've even stepped foot in Belmont? Those are the canals I told you about. Anderson's voice cuts through my thoughts. He nods toward the window. I follow his line of sight, peering 1,000 feet below as the plane grows closer and closer to the ground. Everything is green and vibrant. Small canals lining historic, brick buildings, exactly like I pictured his home country and the capital city of Montrose. Wow. I exhale. It doesn't matter how many times Anderson has shown me photos of what is now my new home, or the multitude of images I've looked at during another online search. Nothing could have prepared me for how beautiful it is. How different it is from the hustle of the concrete jungle we left 8 hours ago. What do you think he asks? She's a sight, isn't she? The love he has for his homeland is clear in both his tone and the small smile that tugs on his lips as he admires the ground below us. It's the look of a man coming home, the same one my father bestowed on me whenever he returned from deployment. It's gorgeous, I tell him. So, European. He chuckles, brushing a soft kiss against my knuckles. Good thing. Because this is part of Europe. There are countries besides England and France. You know, I know. I roll my eyes playfully before looking back out the window. But this is different. It's old, charming. And I'm only seeing it from up above. I can't wait to give you the grand tour. Me, either. He peers down at our intertwined fingers. Have you read up on the royal family at all? He asks after a beat. Not really. I know a little, but I'm not like Chloe, who can write books about your family's history. I laugh nervously. Hell, she probably knows more about your family than you do. Probably. He pauses. Do you know how my father came to be king, I assume because your grandfather passed away? Isn't that how these things work? Usually. Although in Belmont, there's a tradition for the king to voluntarily abdicate around his 65th birthday. But you're right, my grandfather did die. However, my father was only supposed to be the spare. I tilt my head, brow furrowed. The spare. It's an unspoken obligation in the family. You need to have an heir and a spare, 2 kids in case one. He gives me a knowing look. You have a backup. My grandmother, being the overachiever she is, had 4 spares. Makes it sound like kids are commodities, not living, breathing humans. Welcome to my world, Nora. He smiles, but it oozes with sarcasm. I don't remember much about my Uncle Theodore. I was young when he died, only 8. What happened? He and his family went to Switzerland for a skiing holiday one Christmas. An unexpected avalanche came over them, killed him, his wife, and their 4 children, along with several other guests and ski guides. I cover my mouth with my hand, shaking my head. Oh my God. It made headlines back then, but considering you were probably only 2 or 3 at the time, I doubt you remember it. Needless to say, it affected the entire family. Hell, the country. In the blink of an eye, not only did the heir apparent perish, but so did the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in line to the crown. Until that point, I was content with the fact I'd never be king, that I'd never come remotely close to being king. I got to have a normal childhood, unlike my older cousin, who had to go through all this extra tutoring to learn about our government and the monarchy, to learn how to rule. Then it all changed. He swallows hard, a pensive look crossing his face. This will probably come out as extremely insensitive, but when I heard the news, I cried. Not for my cousins or aunt or uncle, but because I saw their deaths as mine, too. Anders. I sigh. You'll hear the word duty being tossed around a lot in the coming weeks. After the accident, I had it thrown at me from every direction. Their bodies were still warm when I was ripped out of my old school in the country and placed in a new one in London, where I'd learn how to be an effective leader. In addition to everything else expected of me, it all happened so quickly. One day, I was just a kid most people barely recognized. The next, my face was all over the media as the future king. From 7th in line to 2nd, his Adam's apple bobs up and down, and within a month, I went from 2nd in line to heir apparent. I close my eyes, my heart breaking for the boy he once was. It sounds crazy, considering the picture popular fiction paints of royalty, but I can see the truth plastered all over Anderson's face. This life isn't as charmed as everyone believes. I'm not telling you this because I want your sympathy. I've made peace with the circumstances that led to this point in my life. I'm telling you this because I know how it feels to be an outsider. Maybe not to the extent you're considered an outsider, but I can relate. The first 8 years of my life, I was normal. Apart from my grandfather being king, I went to a normal school, had normal friends, played normal sports. Then all that changed. The entire country's attention seemed to be focused on my father and me, and, to a lesser degree, my sister, as well as the rest of my cousins. Granted, it's not the same thing as what you'll go through as you get adjusted, but, you're right, cupping his cheek. I brush my thumb against the smooth skin. It makes me miss his usual scruff, something else I'll have to get used to. Anderson's made his distaste for the rules regarding his appearance quite clear. It isn't the same. You had this life thrust upon you. You had no choice but to acclimate. I crane my mouth closer to his. But I do. Anderson. And despite knowing it won't be easy, that there will be quite a few people who don't like the idea of their future king marrying someone like me, I still choose this. My lips skim his. Still choose you. He digs his fingers into my hair, pulling me closer, or as close as possible with an armrest separating us. The plane jostles as the wheels hit the ground, but neither of us breaks away. He swipes his tongue against my lips, and I open for him, not caring who might see us. That doesn't matter. Not when I'll have to share Anderson with the rest of the world in a matter of seconds. For now, I'll take every last heartbeat he'll give me. As the plane slows and turns off the runway, he brings the kiss to an end. Without saying a word, he reaches past me and lowers my window shade. For privacy, he answers my unspoken question. You'll learn to take what you can get. Oh, of course. I stare straight ahead, a bout of nausea rolling over me, which only increases the second the plane comes to a stop, the few members of the cabin crew jumping up from their seats. I study Anderson, taking my cues from him. He remains sitting in the plush chair that's a far cry from any commercial airline seat. But he does unbuckle his seatbelt, so I do the same. I peer at the shaded window, wishing I could see what's going on outside. Then again, it's probably best I don't, especially when the attendant opens the cabin door and I'm able to make out the sound of a crowd assembled nearby. I inhale several deep breaths, practicing the meditation techniques I once taught on a daily basis in the yoga studio I used to run. Positive energy in, negative energy out. But no amount of breathing can help ward off the nerves filling me. When I feel him squeeze my hand, I bring my gaze to Anderson, who gives me an encouraging smile. Noticing movement out of the corner of my eye, I look forward as a man in a dark suit enters the cabin. Creed greets him with a curt nod before they make their way toward us. Your Highness, the man says, bowing his head toward Anderson. He has a no-nonsense attitude. Much like Creed, something about him screams former military, but his frame isn't nearly as formidable as Creed's, who easily towers over him by at least a half foot. Then again, being the same height as Anderson's 6'4", Creed easily towers over most people. Welcome home. Thank you. Nathan, Anderson says in an even tone I've only heard on occasion. It's his business voice, his royal voice, his Prince Gabriel voice. May I introduce you to Ms. Nora Tremblay. Nora, this is my private secretary, Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Bridge. The man looks at me, nodding slightly. Pleasure, ma'am. Likewise. When Anderson first mentioned his private secretary was former military, I was confused why someone with that background would take a job as a secretary. It seemed like a waste of his qualifications. Then he explained that as the private secretary to a member of the royal family, Lieutenant Colonel Bridge is often the first line of communication between Anderson, as heir to the throne, and the rest of the government and royal household, as well as the media. He's also in charge of planning Anderson's day-to-day schedule. Apparently, those working as private secretaries, or assistant private secretaries, yield a considerable amount of influence. Even Creed, Anderson's chief protection officer, must report all of Anderson's movements to Lieutenant Colonel Bridge. As Captain Lawson has advised you, Bridge begins, glancing at Creed before returning his attention to Anderson. There's quite a large press presence here, in addition to a considerable number of civilians lining the road. Good, bad, Anderson inquires. A mixture of both. You're aware there's a small, yet rather vocal minority of the populace who are vehemently anti-foreigner, particularly anti-American. Sensing my growing unease, Anderson grabs my hand in his once more and gives it a squeeze. I am. Captain Lawson has arranged for increased security not only here at the airfield, but also along the route to your residence. I'm in the process of coordinating a response with His Majesty. In the meantime, I'd advise both of you to remain silent. He glances my way, and if I might, I suggest Ms. Tremblay keep her left hand hidden. That way, no one sees you with or without a ring. Out of instinct, I move my left hand from the armrest, pulling it toward me, as if I should be ashamed, at least until we've had more time to discuss this with the royal household. He adds with a trite smile, Captain Lawson and myself will exit the aircraft first. Once we reach the tarmac, you two will step out together, your right hand holding her left. You'll pause at the top, smile, wave. He pins me with a stare, and I can't stress this enough. No matter what you may hear shouted at you, you smile, You wave. You remain the picture of poise and sophistication. A queasiness overtakes me, my stomach roiling. What could anyone possibly say to warrant this sort of admonition? It'll be okay. Anderson touches my chin, turning my eyes toward him. Like I told you, I'll be by your side the entire time. You'll eventually learn to tune out the noise. And that's precisely what this is. Just noise. If you say so. He steals a quick kiss, then turns his attention back to Bridge, awaiting his next instructions. I find this all a bit odd. One day soon, Anderson will lead this country. Yet right now, he's taking orders from his private secretary. Just shows how ignorant I am about how this world works. After a few seconds, you'll descend the stairs and walk casually, yet briskly toward the waiting SUV. Bridge continues. You'll help Ms. Tremblay in first, mindful to keep her left hand hidden from view. Once she's inside, you'll pause, giving the crowd one last wave. Then we'll depart for Wintervale. I look at Anderson. Wintervale. It's the name of my residence. Oh, right. Bridge looks at me with something that borders on disapproval, as if I should have known this. Why would I? It's not like it's ever come up in conversation. We typically steer clear of any discussion of his role as the future monarch. Now I wonder if we were setting ourselves up for failure by ignoring the reality of who he is and who I am. A commoner who fell in love with a prince. We're ready when you are, sir, Bridge states. Thank you. I'd like a moment with Ms. Tremblay. Of course, Your Highness. He bows, then spins, walking purposefully up the aisle, Creed following. Anderson turns to me, his expression urgent. I need you to promise me something. What's that? He grabs both my hands, that no matter what happens, you won't shut me out. I'd never... I know you, Nora. You lock up your feelings, not wanting people to use them against you, as your mother so often did. I get it. Trust me. I did the same thing. In this world, in this family, feelings are a commodity to be used against you. You learn at an early age to keep them to yourself. It's the only way to survive. He drops his hold on my hands and cups my cheeks, edging toward me, his breath dancing on my lips. But I don't want you to do that with me. Not now. Not with this world you're about to enter. It will eat you up and spit you out, if for no other reason than because it can. Because it's powerful. Because it's bloody ruthless. When I was thrust into it, the only thing that helped me was my sister. Esme and I had each other. We're able to share our true feelings. And we still do. So I need you to promise me that you will always talk to me. That you won't shut me out because you're worried I'll find your struggles to be a sign of weakness. Nothing could be further from the truth. You, Nora Jean Tremblay, are one of the strongest women I know. Despite all my warnings about what you'll have to give up, what you'll have to endure, you still chose to walk away from the only life you've ever known to join me in mine. I'll never be able to repay you for this, for everything you've given me. You did get me a nice apartment on the Upper West Side to call home, I remind him, trying to break through the tension, not to mention all the clothes and jewelry you've spoiled me with. Those are material things. They can be replaced. But I hope you feel that my love for you is irreplaceable, because your love for me will never be replaced, and your love for me will never be replaced. I graze my lips over his, our kiss light but still exhilarating. I promise I won't shut you out. He deepens the kiss, then reluctantly pulls away and stands before helping me to my feet. The instant I'm up, Anderson grips my face in his hands. I love you so fucking much. His gaze sears into me, not a touch of hesitation within his brilliant blue orbs. Never forget that. You won't let me. Damn straight. Gorgeous. He treats me to one last kiss. Now. Let's get this dog and pony show over with. We position ourselves as Bridge instructed. Anderson's right hand wrapped around my left. He brings it up to his mouth, kissing my vacant ring finger. I'm sorry about all of this, but for now, it's best we don't give them any more fuel for the fire, I suppose. I understand. He kisses my knuckles again, then lowers my hand, clasping it in what feels like a death grip. As he leads me toward the front of the plane, my pulse steadily increases with each step, echoing in my ears. Why do I feel like a condemned prisoner headed to the gallows? A small voice inside of me tells me that maybe it's because, deep down, I realize I'm not good enough for Anderson, that he'd be better off with someone more appropriate, someone from his typical social circles, someone who can handle the spotlight, someone you'd expect to see with a future king. I do everything to silence that voice. But after a lifetime of being made to feel inadequate by my own mother, it's difficult. As we approach the open door, sunlight streams into the cabin. It feels like my legs are about to give out beneath me. And I'm not the only one anxious about this, either. When I notice a tremble in my hand, I glance to where it's joined with Anderson's, observing a subtle twitch. Are you okay, I ask? It's fine. Don't worry. I part my lips, about to tell him it's my job to worry about him, but I'm cut off by Lieutenant Colonel Bridge. Ready, sir, he asks. Instead of answering, Anderson looks at me, a single brow arched, not wanting this country's first impression of me to be of weakness. I hold my head high, my expression determined. Ready. Chapter 5. Nora, have you ever had one of those dreams where you walking into work or school and everyone's looking at you, but you have no idea why? You don't want to let your insecurities show, so instead of trying to figure out why everyone stops to stare, gawk, perhaps laugh, you continue on the path you've taken every day prior without incident. That's how it feels the moment I step out of the airplane. Anderson at my side. The lights and flashes from dozens of cameras blind me, my irises burning. What I wouldn't give to hide behind a pair of sunglasses. But according to Anderson, those are a big no-no during official events. And this is now an official event. I do everything to maintain my composure and act as if this is just another day. That I'm not being put on display for the world to critique and evaluate. There's so much noise and commotion. I can't decipher a single question or comment shouted at us, but in the midst of it all, I draw strength from Anderson's unwavering hold, his hands still intertwined with mine. I glance at him, giving him a smile as he raises his free hand to wave at the crowd, his motions practiced. Remembering Bridge's instructions, I do the same. I hope I don't appear foolish. I never thought much about how to wave. Now I'm overly critical of myself. Is it too enthusiastic? Too indifferent? Too much? Not enough? When Anderson squeezes my hand, I know that's my signal for us to start walking down the stairs. Placing my free hand on the railing, I carefully descend the steps. I do my best to keep smiling, although it's becoming more and more difficult, particularly when I'm able to decipher some of their questions. Is she pregnant? Your Highness? Are you worried she's only marrying you because of your money? What does this mean for your relationship with Caroline de Vries? Your Highness? What makes you think you're better than someone from this country? She's not even that pretty. Your Highness, you can do much better. Anderson tightens his grip on me, silently telling me to ignore them. I can't believe the balls some of these reporters have to ask such horrific questions and make such derogatory comments. We're living in the age of social media. I've read my fair share of awful things, but you must have a serious lack of conscience to tell someone they're a gold digger to their face when you know nothing about them. By the time we reach the SUV, my nerves are frayed. Each insult flung at me another scar against my skin. Sensing my agitation, Anderson's quick to help me inside. Then, as instructed, he gives one final smile and wave before ducking in beside me, keeping my eyes focused straight ahead. I don't take a breath until the airfield is far behind us. At least the crowd lining the streets from the airport seems a bit more supportive than the press, many of them holding signs congratulating us on our engagement. There are a few accusing Anderson of selling out his nationality, but the majority seem happy for him. I try to find comfort in that, but it's difficult. How am I going to survive life in the spotlight as Anderson's wife and a goddamn princess when I could barely handle the few seconds it took me to walk off the plane into the car? You did great, Nora. Anderson reassures me. Is it always like this for you? Not usually. He runs his fingers through his hair. Yes, I'm often hassled by reporters or photographers when in public, but this kind of thing only happens when there's been a big news story about the monarchy. I nod, gazing out of the window, not even able to appreciate my surroundings. The historic architecture, the cobblestone roads, the flower-adorned railings on the bridges across the canals. All I can think about is if we'll ever be a normal couple again. Would you rather live your entire life in virtual reality, where all your wishes are granted and dreams come true? Anderson begins after a long silence. Or live in the real world, where you may face things that frighten or scare you? I scrunch my brows at him. What are you doing? He shrugs. Would you rather, like when we were two strangers crazy enough to go on a road trip together? It seemed to break the tension back then. He waves his hand. I'd hoped it would break the tension between us now, too. I reach across the seat and squeeze his thigh. As much as I hate the real world sometimes, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Either would I. His shoulders relax as he exhales a long breath, a slow smile playing on his full lips. Your turn. My turn. Have you forgotten how the game's played? It's been a while, but okay, I interrupt. Just give me a minute. I chew on my lower lip, trying to come up with an appropriate scenario. It brings back memories of our early days together, of the endless stretch of road as we traveled Route 66, of gradually transitioning from complete strangers to friends, then to something more than friends. They are some of the happiest moments. Would you rather spend a year traveling the world on a shoestring budget, or spend a year living in luxury but be forced to remain in one country? Is that even a question? A year traveling, without a doubt. He brings my hand to his lips, preferably on Route 66 so I can meet you for the first time all over again. Although, I must confess, what's that? I tilt my head. Every day I wake up with you in my life feels like the morning after we first met. I still experience the same excitement, the same wonder, the same faith. I sigh, losing myself in his eyes. In that one look, all my anxiety evaporates. I don't know how you do it, Anderson, but I manage to fall in love with you all over again every day, even when you piss me off. He throws his head back, his laughter filling the small space. I'll try not to piss you off. Although, you should be aware that piss has a different meaning here. And what's that legless drunk? Ah, of course. I'll have to remember that. I'm sure there's a lot I'll need to learn in the coming weeks and months. I peer at him thoughtfully, then settle back into the seat, welcoming the distraction from the people lining the streets. Tell me some of it. What do you mean I'm pretty new to this whole royalty thing? What are some of the rules I'll have to adhere to other than the few you've already shared? Like no sushi, which I've only agreed to because I like your dick too much. Creed laughs from the front seat, yet tries to cover it with a cough. I'm happy to hear that. Anderson winks, then stares ahead, expression pinched in contemplation. Here's one you made me break on our road trip. What? No associating with commoners, no selfies. You're joking. That's actually a rule. Afraid so. What's the reason behind it? I ask myself that regarding a lot of these rules. Some I can understand. For example, once my father became king, I was no longer able to travel with him. I couldn't even ride in the same car. Is that because of what happened to your uncle and cousins? Actually, no. That's been a rule as long as I can remember. The heir apparent can never travel with the monarch. Once we arrived at our final destination, we could be together, but we couldn't fly on the same plane or anything like that. I can kind of understand that. Must make planning a vacation a nightmare. Though, I add in jest as the SUV pulls off a quaint road and comes to a stop in front of a gate. A man dressed in a dark suit steps out of the guardhouse, bowing toward the back seat where he must know Anderson sits, despite all the windows being tinted black. Then the gate opens, and Creed maneuvers the SUV up a winding drive shaded by mature trees. I gawk at my surroundings. Is this Wintervale flowers and perfectly manicured grass line the long driveway? Everything full of color and well-maintained? I can't remember the last time I've lived somewhere with grass. It's one of those things you take for granted until you move somewhere like Manhattan and have to go to Central Park to enjoy it. It's the residence of the heir apparent. Well, technically, it's supposed to be the heir apparent's residence upon his marriage. But I kind of broke the rules on that front. How so? Most members of the royal family are married before they're 30. It's encouraged in order to produce an heir. And a spare. Don't forget the spare. Never. He winks. But after I lost Kendall, he smiles sadly. I squeeze his hand, knowing all too well how he feels. It doesn't matter how many years have passed. Like Hunter, Kendall was Anderson's first love, and was also someone who wasn't supposed to die young. Whereas I lost Hunter in a car accident. He watched Kendall collapse during a volleyball tournament, then spent months blaming himself after learning she had an undiagnosed heart condition that caused her to have a heart attack and die before her 30th birthday. At least I was able to mourn Hunter in private. Anderson wasn't. Instead, he was forced to say goodbye to the woman he hoped to marry while the paparazzi attempted to cash in on his grief. My father gifted it to me, he continues. Hoped it would remind me of my place in this world. Did it? At first, I decided the best thing was to focus on my role as heir and future monarch. When I received an invitation to speak at the opening of a volleyball training center in Long Island that was named for her, I returned to the U.S. for the first time since her death, and that was where I was diagnosed with MS. I thought it was heat stroke or the stress of being surrounded by memories of Kendall. Even told Creed that was the reason I'd fainted. But it wasn't. It wasn't. So instead of hopping on a plane to Los Angeles, where I'd planned to spend a few weeks before returning home, I decided to drive. He leans toward me, brushing his lips against mine. And one fateful day. I glanced up from my coffee in a loud, greasy diner in Chicago and saw this woman meditating. I laugh under my breath. Not the most conducive spot to clear your mind. True. But I knew I had to find out more about her. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for every day I get to know you. He presses a chaste kiss to my lips as the car slows to a stop, then gestures out the window toward a palatial brick building that looks like it belongs on the set of a period romance. Welcome to Wintervale. Nora. Blinking, I slowly slide out of the car after a valet opens my door and drink it all in. Vines snake around the facade of the massive 3-story building, not in an overgrown manner, but in a way that adds a historic feel to this impressive estate. I want to pinch myself. This can't be real. Can it? A year ago, my divorce had just been finalized, and I was unsure what my future held. Never could I have imagined I'd be engaged to a prince, that I'd be the future queen consort of a European country. It feels like I'm living a fairy tale, like I'm the unnamed narrator in Rebecca seeing Manderley for the first time, just like she'd encountered a rude awakening once she was thrust into a life she never imagined. I know I'll face the same. For now, I want to bask in this brief slice of happiness, of the sun warming my skin, the birds chirping, the fresh air surrounding me, the feeling of hope. What do you think? It's nice. I shrug, feigning indifference. I've seen bigger. I mean, the fountain is a bit unimpressive. I nod toward a gorgeous three-tiered fountain in the center of the circular drive. Anderson slings an arm over my shoulders, kissing my cheek. Well, for you, my beautiful Nora, I'll have an even bigger one put in. Now, come on. I have plans for you. He waggles his brows. Plans. When his eyes darken, a thrill shoots through me. Oh yes, big plans. And they involve me, you, a bed, and absolutely no distractions. I tilt my head back and relish in the warmth of his lips on mine. I like the sound of that. Chapter 6. Anderson. I don't think I've ever seen Nora's eyes as wide as they are now. She's always had a sort of doe-eyed appearance, her face reminding me of the way many animators seem to draw princesses. Soft features, pouty lips, bright eyes. But as I introduce Nora to her new home, I'm confident they're about to pop out of her head. Between the spacious library, private yoga studio I had designed, and lush gardens where Nora plans to spend a great deal of time meditating, she's on cloud 9. It takes longer than I'd anticipated to show her around the grounds and introduce her to the staff. Or maybe it feels that way because I'm desperate to be alone with her after having to share her for the past few hours. I'm done sharing. And when we finally make it to the bedroom, I'm rather short with Richard, my personal butler, dismissing him with an order that I'm not to be disturbed for the rest of the day. Once we're alone, Nora gives me a coy look. Does everyone here always do whatever you tell them if they want to keep their job? They do, I answer. Although that's not entirely true. Half the time, I'm the one being told what to do, not the other way around. Hips swaying, she saunters up to me, her gaze darkening. In a heartbeat, I forget everything else, my body buzzing to life, my pulse increases, a dizzying sensation consuming me, my fingers aching to reach out and touch every inch of her. And what about me? She curves toward me, wrapping her hand around my thigh, urging my mouth closer to hers. But there's still too much space between us. I want to consume her, devour her, lose myself in her to the point where I'll no longer be able to tell where I end and she begins. Our souls intertwined for all eternity, nothing about to come between us. What about you? Do I have to do everything you tell me to? Her tone is husky. Do you want to? I chase after her kiss, but she remains out of reach. My desperation for her growing with every pounding heartbeat. That depends. On what? She brings her mouth to within a whisper of mine. On what my punishment will be if I disobey. Growling, I dig my fingers into her hair, my hold on her resolute. I crush my lips against hers, coaxing her mouth open. When my tongue sweeps against hers, she whimpers, our kiss wild and filled with lust, teeth clashing, hands roaming, bodies wanting. This is exactly what I need today. This connection, this addiction, this love. Gripping her hips, I move her backward across the room and toward the bed. I don't break our connection. I can't. She's my one source of sustenance, my lifeline. Without the elixir in her kiss, I'd perish and die. When the back of her legs hit the bed, I scoop her up and gently toss her onto the mattress. Her eyes narrow hungrily, watching my every move as I shrug off my jacket and drop it onto the floor, my tie quickly joining it. I crawl up her body and cover her mouth once more, pulsing against her as she wraps her legs around my waist. Do you feel what you do to me? I ask through my heavy breathing. How much I need you. I do. She pants, threading her fingers into my hair. I snake down her frame, my hands exploring this body I know so intimately. You should feel how much I need you. I plan on it. I pause and lift my eyes to hers. the awe and wonder of minutes ago replaced with a burning desire. Actually, I'd rather taste how much you need me. Would you like that, God? Yes. She moans as I wrap my mouth around her nipple through her dress. The material a rather unwelcome barrier. I need that so much right now. I continue down her body, trailing soft kisses along the way. When I settle between her legs, I pause to admire her ragged breathing, her chest heaving. I push the skirt of her dress up around her waist and reveal a sexy pair of pink panties. I don't recognize these, I comment, grazing my thumb over the lace material. They're new. Is that right? Chewing on her lower lip, she nods. You should see what else I got. I can't bloody wait. For now, I'd love nothing more than to rip these damn knickers off you. Then what are you waiting for? She lifts her hips in invitation. I hook my fingers into the waistband of her panties, fumbling to rid her of them as quickly as possible. Once I toss them aside, I return to her, stealing a glance at her expression. Lips parted, eyes closed, expression flushed. I'm not even touching her yet, but that doesn't matter. The promise of what's to come is enough to ignite the flames within. Gripping her thighs, I spread them apart, pressing my mouth against her, my tongue circling her clit. A moan slips from her throat as she throbs against me, urging me to go faster, deeper, harder. God, I love you. She exhales, digging her nails into my scalp. I continue worshiping her, nudging a finger inside. She thrusts harder against me, her breathing growing more uneven, muscles tightening around me. I push another finger inside her, stretching and massaging. I'm so focused on her, on making her feel good. I barely register when a knock rips through the space. It's not until Nora hoists herself up onto her elbows and stares at the door. I realize we're being interrupted. Anders. I think ignore it. My hand on her chest. I push her back against the mattress. I return to her, tuning out everything else, thrusting my 2 fingers back inside her before adding a third. She succumbs to me again, her moans and whimpers growing closer together as she fights her impending orgasm. I suck her clit harder, my motions more frenzied. Then there's another knock, which only serves to aggravate me even more. This never happened back in New York. Anders. Nora attempts to pull away from me again. And again. I refuse to let her, placing my hand on her stomach, pinning her to the bed. Ignore it. I tell her. This time louder, more demanding, more desperate. I continue plunging my fingers inside her, no longer sure if I'm doing this for her or for me. I know what's waiting on the other side of the door. I need this one slice of normalcy before being sucked back into my reality. When the knock sounds again, this time more incessant, I jump from the bed, growling out of frustration. I toss a blanket over Nora before storming toward the door and yanking it open only enough for Nathan to see my face. Will you bugger off, I seethe, lip curled. I left explicit instructions I was not to be disturbed. So what is so bloody important that I can't be left alone for one goddamn minute? His expression remains even, not so much as a flinch in response to my outburst. He bows his head, as if he'd interrupted my morning coffee, not me on the brink of making love to my fiancé. His Majesty has requested your presence at Lamberside. Immediately. My jaw ticks, hand clenching into a fist as I fight against a tremor. Captain Lawson is waiting with the car. Sir, I have an overwhelming urge to tell Bridge I'm not going. Perhaps if I were still a defiant teenager and college student, I might. But in a few years, I'll be king. I need to start acting like it. Fine. I huff, not hiding my irritation. Give me a few minutes and I'll be right down. Of course, with another bow. He spins, striding purposefully down the hallway. I close the door behind him, staring at it for several long seconds, cursing under my breath. You have to go, Nora comments. It's neither a question nor a statement, but some ambivalent remark in between. I exhale as I slowly face her. I'm sorry. Love. I walk to the bed and lower myself onto the corner. Trust me when I say going to the palace is the absolute last thing I want to do today. I'd much rather spend it in bed with you. Raising herself to sitting, she bends toward me. I'll take a rain check. When her lips graze mine, a current runs through me, which only increases my frustration. This isn't how I pictured your first day here. I thought I'd have time to ease you into things. I think we both saw this going differently. She gives me a pointed look. But it's important you go address our situation. Her expression turns playful. You can't tell the king to. What was it you said, bugger off? With a slight chuckle. I bury my head into her neck and inhale her scent. I'll be back as soon as I can. I meet her gaze. It's a gorgeous day, so relax. Lounge by the pool. Meditate in the gardens. Whatever you'd like. Try not to fall asleep, or you'll never get used to the time difference. If you need anything, let Richard, the butler, know. Food, supplies, anything. They'll get it for you. And when I come back, I waggle my brows, hovering over her once more, my lips skimming hers. I plan to pick up right where we left off. I run my hand up her leg, squeezing her thigh. Well then, she begins in a breathy voice. Don't be gone long. After treating her to one last kiss, I stand, grabbing my tie and jacket off the floor. I pull it on, making quick work of redoing my tie, something I can do blindfolded at this point. As I reach the door, I pause, glancing over my shoulder at her. I love you. She smiles that smile that both broke my heart and put it all back together when I first saw her. And I love you. I hold her gaze for a beat, then walk out of my private quarters and toward the uncertainty of my future. Chapter 7. Anderson. The halls of the palace are silent as I follow my father's principal private secretary, Colonel Frederick Winters, toward wherever I'm to speak with him. I'd expected him to lead me toward the private residence, thinking this a personal matter between father and son. I should have known better. After all, as people have reminded me most of my life, there are no personal matters anymore. All personal matters are also matters of the state. Considering I'll one day be the sovereign, we finally come to a stop outside a heavy wooden door leading to the conference room in the monarch's executive suite. Colonel Winters knocks once, then opens the door. His Royal Highness Prince Gabriel, he announces, then steps aside to allow me to walk into the room. I wasn't sure what would await me, but as I glance around the large conference table to see not only my father, but also my grandmother, the Queen Mother, as well as the head of the royal household, Dalton Peel, I know this is a bigger deal than I'd anticipated. Your Majesty, I say to my father with a bow, then offer my grandmother the same courtesy, even if it's not technically required. She was once queen, even though her husband, my grandfather, passed away years ago, and the requirement to bow ended with him. It's still protocol to show her the respect she deserves after her years of service to the country. Take a seat, Gabriel. My father gestures to the chair at the opposite end of the table from where he, my grandmother, and Dalton sit. I almost want to remain standing just to maintain some semblance of control in this conversation. I know better than that, though I've been trained better than that. If my father sits, everyone else should, as well. If he stands, everyone must follow, at least in more formal meetings, which I'm quickly realizing this is. I unbutton my suit jacket as I lower myself to the chair, keeping my back straight. I apologize for the fact you found out about the engagement this way. If you'll look at your calendar for tomorrow, you'll see I'd requested to speak to you. I'd planned to ask for your approval to marry Ms. Tremblay then. I fully intended to follow protocol. He studies me, seeming to assess my words for a prolonged moment. His dark hair sports a bit more gray than the last time I saw him. but the combination of his stoic features and tall frame gives him an intimidating presence. There used to be a time I saw the man who gave me life whenever I looked at him. It didn't take long for that to change. The minute he walked down the aisle of the National Cathedral and was anointed with holy water in our most hallowed of ceremonies, his family was no longer his priority, his country was, the monarchy was. Since then, every single one of his decisions has been focused on what's best for the monarchy. Nothing else. Apart from being the heirs, Esme and I no longer mattered to him. We were no longer viewed as human beings in need of a father's love, but as a necessary commodity to keep the monarchy going. There are times I still feel that way. Despite any breakthroughs to mend our relationship my father and I may have had over the years. Like when he learned I was considering removing myself from the line of succession upon being diagnosed with MS, he convinced me I didn't have to, that I could use my diagnosis to bring attention to the disease, that I could still be an effective leader. It was one of those rare moments he acted like my father, not the king, but I haven't seen that human side of him since. And I certainly don't see it now, especially when he's in the presence of the head of the royal household who, for all intents and purposes, is one of the people who makes the real decisions. My father may not see it, but I do. He's just one piece on a giant chessboard. And the members of the royal household are the chess masters moving us around as they see fit in search of victory. I appreciate your candor. Gabriel. He begins. I didn't realize things between you and this American Nora. I correct him. She has a name, and it's Nora. I'd appreciate it if you used it. I look from him to Dalton on his right, then my grandmother to his left. All of you. My father doesn't respond for several moments. He simply stares at me, as if waiting for Dalton to give him permission to move one square or remain where he is. Finally, he nods. Nora, I didn't realize things between you and Nora were serious. How could you when you never seemed to show much interest in my life? I snip back. Apart from how it relates to the monarchy. Gabriel, darling. My grandmother interjects in a formal, well-practiced tone, evidencing her noble upbringing. I look in her direction, her demeanor as cold and aloof as I've always remembered. Sure, on the outside, she's beautiful. Her short, straight, silver hair, piercing, gray eyes, and tall, slender frame repeatedly earning her a place on a popular magazine's list of the most beautiful women over 50. But her inner beauty could use some work. What your father's trying to say is he believed her to be more of a dalliance. She finishes with a trite smile. I arch a brow. A dalliance. Can you blame him? She narrows her gaze on me. Up until a year ago, that seemed to be your so to speak. We had no reason to believe this woman was anything more than another distraction while you sorted through the stress of your diagnosis. We assumed once you got it all out of your system, you'd return and marry someone more. She trails off, searching for the correct word. More what I grind out. This conversation isn't helping to keep my stress level to a minimum. As my doctors have advised, heat courses through my veins. And not out of desire like mere minutes ago when I was alone with Nora. Instead, it's out of a rage desperate to be unleashed. But I can't do that. I know the rules. Worse, I know the ramifications of showing too much emotion. In this life, emotions are a weakness to be used against you. I have no doubt they'll use the way I feel about Nora against me. They'll use Nora against me. Someone more appropriate. Dalton Peel interjects without hesitation. If you ask me, there's no one more appropriate to marry than the woman I love. This isn't about love, Gabriel, my grandmother states dismissively, waving a bony hand through the air. Not about love. How can marriage not be about love? For most people, it is. But I don't need to remind you that we're not most people. You're not most people. You're the heir apparent, the future king, and you have a duty to produce the next heir to the throne. You can't do so with some American we know nothing about. especially with the referendum on the ballot this November. And unlike the previous occasions, a constitutional amendment to severely limit the powers of the monarchy has made it onto the ballot. It has quite a lot of support this time. If we make one wrong step, we risk it passing, essentially turning the monarch into more a figurehead than an actual leader. And this... She leans toward me, eyes like ice. This is a serious misstep. Gabriel. I grip the arms of the chair, needing it to keep me grounded when I'm ready to lash out at every single person in this room. You got to marry for love, I remind my father. He was never supposed to be king, my grandmother points out, as if I need the reminder that my life was once normal, that I once had 2 parents who loved me and my sister, that I once had all the opportunity in the world. Not anymore. People are under the impression we lead a charmed life, because that's what we want them to believe, what we're taught to make them believe. In reality, we're prisoners. Our cage may be gilded, but it's still a cage. And look what happened. Your mother was too weak to handle the stress of this life. She very well could have destroyed everything we've built for centuries. Over the decades, there's been increasing sentiment that the monarchy is an antiquated notion. All it will take is enough people to show up on election day who share those sentiments for this all to disappear. We cannot have that. We cannot have the king married to someone weak. I glance at my father, seeing his own jaw tighten as he seems to hold back what he wants to say in defense of his wife. But he won't. And not because he doesn't want to be disrespectful toward his mother, but because he's been trained. Thankfully. I haven't been around this life long enough to have all my humanity erased. That woman was my mother. And if my wife ends up being half the queen she was, even in her short time at my father's side before her untimely death, I'd consider myself blessed. There are a number of respectful women you could marry. Gabriel, she insists, especially Caroline de Vries. She's a much better option, in my opinion. From a good family, a noble family, most of the country assumed you'd eventually marry anyway. We've already prepared a response, Dalton interjects, extending a file folder toward me. The king will offer his congratulations, but remain tight-lipped about any forthcoming approval of the marriage. After a few weeks have passed, we'll announce your engagement to Ms. Tremblay has ended. That she wasn't prepared to give up everything she'd have to in order to stay in this life, including her American citizenship. You'll act heartbroken for a while, but we'll stage some photographs of Ms. de Vries comforting you. You'll rekindle your relationship. We didn't have a relationship, I retort, my eyes flaming. I glance at my grandmother, giving her a smug grin. It was more of a dalliance. After sufficient time has passed, Dalton continues, ignoring my previous comment. His Majesty will announce your engagement to Ms. de Vries, preferably by November. Before the referendum goes to a vote, the publicity team feels that would have the greatest impact on swaying voters. After all, people love a wedding, especially a royal wedding. I can't believe what I'm looking at, but here it is in black and white. A plan for me to marry a woman I'm not in love with, all because these people think she'll be a better fit. As you can see in the report, Ms. de Vries is in optimal health and is fertile. I fight to swallow down the bile rising to my throat. Fertile. Is this actually happening? Am I really listening to my father's chief advisor detailing Caroline's ability to conceive a child? How do they even know this information? This is too similar to the discussions I've had with Esme about some of the horses she's trained that she decided to put out to stud. Is this all we are? 2. Something bred with another carefully selected specimen in the hopes of producing offspring that will be at the top of his or her game. I know the answer to that. I've always known the answer to that. She'll be able to provide you with an heir without complications, Dalton clarifies. As if this is a normal conversation. We don't know anything about this American. Nora, I hiss. Nora, he corrects, but shows no hint of an apology. We have no way of knowing whether she can produce an heir. She can, I argue. Right now, he adds. I'm well aware of her history. How she lost her first pregnancy? Ember? Excuse me, my grandmother asks. I pin her with a glare, not caring about decorum or protocol. Her daughter's name was Ember. She didn't just lose her first pregnancy. She went through labor and gave birth, all the while knowing that when her baby was born, she wouldn't have a heartbeat, which is precisely why you should reconsider this course of action. She responds flippantly, her pointed nose upturned. You don't know if she's still able to conceive after that trauma. She says the word like it leaves a sour taste in her mouth. She's one of the few people who knows precisely what trauma Nora endured that caused her to lose Ember. And Hunter, she's fine. I insist once more. You don't know that. What happens if, by some miracle, this wedding does happen, and you find yourself saddled with a wife who can't provide you the one thing she's under an obligation to, an heir? The longer I sit here and listen to my grandmother speak about Nora as if her only value to me is as a womb, the more my temper rises, the more my hand twitches, the fewer fucks I give about the consequences of my actions. You're already well past the age most royals marry. When I was your age, I'd already had 5 children. But you're not even married. Your uncle was married at 22, had his first heir at 23. You're nearing 40, for crying out loud. All the more reason to give serious consideration to Caroline DeVries. She's a respectable girl we know can produce an heir. There's a real possibility Ms. Tremblay may never be able to give you an heir, as is required of your wife. Nora's already pregnant, I bellow, fists clenching, chest heaving. The room falls eerily silent. Chapter 8. Anderson. What did you say? My grandmother asks. Still the picture of grace and refinement. No matter how angry she may be on the inside, her composure never wavers. Shit. I shouldn't have allowed my emotions to overpower my rationale. Shouldn't have lost my cool. And I certainly shouldn't have shared that piece of information. I look away from her and toward the only person in this room who can remotely be considered an ally, my father. Nora's pregnant. I'm going to be a father. And you're certain the baby is yours? Dalton asks. Have you had a paternity test conducted? I glower at him, my lip curling in the corner. Why would I need that? With all due respect, sir, we don't know anything about this woman. She could simply be after your money. The pregnancy could be a trap. She may not even be pregnant. Placing my hands on the table, I lean across it, fire in my eyes. I will not have you talking about my fiancé and your future queen that way. I grind out. I almost want him to argue with me on this point, not to mention the mother of your future king or queen. As well. Not necessarily, he counters. Why? Because you think you can sit here and dictate who I can and can't marry. I'm sorry to tell you, but I don't give a damn what you think. As it stands, he interrupts, tone icy, his small, dark eyes trained on me in superiority. Even if she is pregnant with your child, he or she will not be considered a full heir with rights of succession unless you're married when the baby is born. And the marriage is one approved by the sovereign. He looks at my father. While Dalton's opinion on the matter is clear, based on the disgust covering his expression, my father's isn't. I can sense his turmoil, feel his humanity, so that's what I need to appeal to. His human side, his reasonable side. Would you really withhold your approval of my marriage to the woman I love and would do anything for a woman who's currently carrying your grandchild because some advisor told you to? You're the king. Father, you make the decisions. He peers at me, torn. As king, he needs to act according to what's best for his country and the monarchy. Right now, that appears to conflict with his role as my father. who should support his son when he's finally found the woman he wants to spend the rest of his life with. You've really dug yourself into a hole here. He exhales, breaking the silence. I just want to marry the woman of my dreams. Like you were able to. That was before anyone thought I'd be king. I wasn't under an obligation to get the monarch's approval because I'd already been pushed down to sixth in line by that time. It's different with you. You are the heir apparent. Whom you decide to marry holds a great deal of weight on how people will view the strength of the monarchy, and how will it make the monarchy look if people find out I'm forbidden from marrying the woman carrying my child. I look from him to my grandmother. I've always remembered my place, stayed quiet about a lot. I return my attention to my father, but if you allow this to happen, I will not stay quiet about it. You can be damn certain about that. He pinches the bridge of his nose, the stress of this situation wearing on him. When he looks at me again, his gaze goes to my hand. I follow his line of sight, noticing the tremors. I thought you were doing better. I shake out my hand. You were I correct. I am. It's fine. Probably just jet lag. He studies me for a protracted beat, then sighs. I won't withhold my approval. I exhale a huge breath of relief. Thank you. Your Majesty. Dalton interjects, eyes frantic. You've seen the reports from the polling the publicity team did. Those numbers don't... My father holds up his hand, cutting him off. Dalton quickly falls silent, but it's obvious it kills him to do so, to know the king is no longer following his advice. At least not on this matter. I have complete control over my approval, he says, giving Dalton a pointed stare before looking back at me. But I can't do anything about the law of succession. For your child to be an heir, to be considered part of the royal family, he or she cannot be illegitimate. What is this? The bloody 1950s? People have babies all the time without being married. The rules on who can and can't ascend to the throne are clear. Granted, they were put in place because some of our ancestors seemed to think it a competition to see how many women they could impregnate. That was centuries ago. Times change. Yes. But the purpose for it is still valid. I know. Protect the monarchy. I run a hand over my face. It's amazing how I could go from being on cloud 9 when I asked Nora to marry me a week ago to being absolutely miserable. A part of me wishes I'd never come home, but I couldn't just ignore my duty, especially with the referendum on the ballot. The people need to be reminded of exactly what they're voting for, having me as their king in a few years when my father voluntarily abdicates, as is the tradition. And if we decide we don't care about the baby being a full heir, I ask, if we don't want to be rushed to marry before he or she is born, if that's my father begins. But Dalton places his hand on his arm, stopping him. There's also the Royal Marriages Act to consider. All that says is, I need the monarch's approval prior to marrying. Essentially, yes. But if you recall your schooling, you'll remember it also sets forth restrictions on this grant of approval. The Royal Marriages Act forbids the king from approving a marriage between an heir to the throne and someone of loose morals. Loose morals, I couldn't have heard him right. This must be some sort of alternative universe. That's the only possible explanation for what's going on right now. What does that even mean? According to the Act, that includes but isn't limited to prostitutes, habitual drug users, and women who bear a child outside of wedlock. You do realize it's the goddamn 21st century, right? I seethe. Someone choosing to have a child outside of wedlock isn't evidence of loose morals. It's a personal decision. May I ask how far along Nora is in her pregnancy? My grandmother inquires. 6 weeks. She nods, keeping her shoulders square. There are options, Dalton says after a beat. Options. We can still fix this situation. Fix. I struggle to say, knowing all too well what he's suggesting. It's still early on in the pregnancy. There's still time to... He waves a hand. Make it go away. I believe that's better for all involved. Given the referendum vote, it takes every ounce of self-control I have to not fly across this table and land a hard blow to his face. I find it ironic they'll forbid me from marrying Nora if she's already given birth to my child. But they'll sit here and suggest I do something unthinkable. Hypocrisy at its finest. It doesn't help you haven't been in the picture much lately. Sir, he continues, people are already concerned about your condition. Condition. Yes. They remember how quickly your mother died from MS. That was because she didn't get the help she needed and took her own life. A detail you've all conveniently kept out of the media. Nevertheless, all that matters right now is that the monarchy is in jeopardy. The referendum didn't have much support until you broke protocol and granted an interview to some American magazine. Now, all the people of this country see are the king approaching retirement age and an heir who may not be able to fulfill his obligations. So you need to do everything possible to reinstill their confidence in you. Based on early polling, this leaked engagement to an American, no less, certainly isn't doing that. But a royal wedding may just distract them. My father interjects softly. Dalton whips his head toward him. Excuse me. My father smiles slyly. You said it yourself when you shared your plan regarding Ms. De Vries. You claimed people love a wedding, especially a royal wedding, that it gives them something to be a part of. We saw how wrapped up the people of this country were during the latest British royal wedding. They filled stadiums to celebrate it. And he married an American, too. If you're so concerned about this referendum, perhaps that's an alternative to your proposal. What as I ask? My father faces me. That you marry Nora before people go to the polls this November. Preferably before she starts to show. Before she starts to show, she's 6 weeks now. I'd suggest marrying her within the next 8 weeks at most. We must consider the public perception. The longer you wait to marry her, the more obvious the reason you are marrying her will become. I'm marrying her because I love her. Her pregnancy is just an unexpected blessing. Nothing else. That's not the way people will see it. If they learn she's pregnant before you're married, they'll think that's the reason. Won't people get suspicious anyway? I argue. Particularly if we announce we're getting married in a matter of weeks when the baby is born, they're bound to do the math. But by that point, the vote will have already passed, and they'll be too excited about the birth of a royal baby. I blink repeatedly, looking into the distance. Heavy drapes frame the tall windows, portraits of important figures in Belmont history hanging on the walls, as if a reminder of my place in this world. But what about Nora? This is a completely new world for her. We've discussed taking the next year to adjust to our new life together and being new parents. Now we don't have a choice but to rush into marriage just to be together. Listen, Anderson, my father says, turning from the king into my father, I can give you my approval, and I do so happily. But the second your child is born, I can no longer grant you that approval. If you wait to marry until she's given birth, you'll be doing so in direct violation of a royal act, which will automatically remove me from the line of succession. Precisely. A year ago, I had every intention of giving up my place in the line of succession just to prevent my father from forcing me out, as I'd assumed he did to my mother after she was diagnosed with MS. Now I know that wasn't the case, that the depression she experienced after her diagnosis made her push everyone away. I tried to do the same thing, but Esme wouldn't let me. More so, my father wouldn't, either. Now I'm actually looking forward to the day I'll lead this country, can bring it and the monarchy into the 21st century, can give it the breath of fresh air it needs. But at what cost to Nora? I can't make this decision without talking to her. I tell him, this life is all new to her. The media circus, the spotlight. He nods, standing. I do the same. I can hold off on making a statement to the press for a day or two. That should give you enough time to discuss this with her. In the meantime, Dalton begins, rising to his feet, as well. If anyone asks about your status, you tell them I know. I know. No comment. I force a smile. Precisely. I turn my attention toward my grandmother. She's remained unusually quiet throughout most of this conversation. As I learned from playing chess with her being silent is never a good thing. Those long stretches of time when she simply stared at the chessboard, mentally playing out all her moves, usually led to her declaring a rather embarrassing victory. I hope the same isn't true here. I bow toward her. Your Majesty. Then I face my father, offering him the same sign of respect before retreating from the conference room. My father's private secretary greets me the second I step into the foyer. He bows toward me, then spins, leading me away from the executive wing, as if I'm a visitor, not someone who spent his adolescent years in this building. Once I'm back in the SUV and the imposing palace walls are far behind me, Creed meets my eyes in the rearview mirror. How did it go? I give him a knowing look as I roll my eyes. That good, I blow out a laugh. Worse. No matter what, Nora's a strong woman. She'll be okay. I nod, leaning my head back against the seat, praying he's right. Sure, I'd told her what life would be like as my wife, the things she'd have to give up. But that was before she saw it for herself, before she experienced it for herself. Will she still want this? Want to be under a microscope for the rest of her life? Like she told me earlier today, she wasn't thrust into this life like I was. She chose it. But now that she's had a taste, will she still choose it? Will she still